So back in the years of 1977 to like 1991 and such, kids were on their own a lot. Their parents were fucking having to work 2 shifts at the fucking, just to keep fucking food on the table. Mamas were going to work. Like, it wasn't just enough for daddy to go to work and mama to fucking raise kids, man. Now mama had to go to work too, and daddy had to go to work, and they had to raise the kids together. Or maybe fucking, divorce rates were going up and shit. And now you had fucking like no kids at home. I mean, like no parents at home. The kids would come home, our kids of my Generation X. We fucking were the most unsupervised generation yet at that point. We fucking would come home at 3 and let ourselves in, and by fucking 6 or so, maybe a parent would come home. We would also a lot of times wake up in the morning and let our watch a couple hours of TV in the morning, and then our parents would be fucking tired as fuck. They'd go to bed around 9 or 10, and then we'd have a couple hours extra to watch TV at night. And so we were getting inundated with media, and there was a lot of media at the time. There's a lot now, but this was when we had cable television and HBO and shit, and HBO and all them. We had access to VCRs and stuff. So HBO would like put movies in rotation, and then it would play them like regularly for like 6 weeks. And we were kind of the first generation to see movies over and over and over and over again. We had access to them, and we would watch them, repeatedly. We would tape them. If they weren't coming on the regular on HBO, we would tape them, and we could watch them whenever. So we were the first generation that got exposed to so much media, all that cable television and all these movies and such. And we also had absent parents. Our parents were off working, so this fucking shit was raising us to a certain extent, and we were unsupervised. And so what I'm wanting to do is look at movies that we watched back then through the lens of how do they age now? How did they affect me personally, as a stand-in for an entire generation, and how did they affect our generation as a whole? And then how are these movies just as fucking movies, right? So I picked John Hughes movies to start with because they were the ones. These motherfuckers taught us as youngsters how other youngsters acted and felt, and the dramas that other young people motherfucking went through and such. And he had a lot of power, at that time. And I really want to go back into his movies first and talk about them. And because he wasn't perfect, in fact, he's problematic in a lot of ways. And one of the ways he's most problematic is how he treats women. There aren't a lot of, the women in a lot of the movies are not treated as strongly as probably they could. Like Lisa in Weird Science, which I'm going to talk about now, is like an omnipotent motherfucking being. And even she is enslaved to Gary and Wyatt. And let's talk about Gary and Wyatt. Gary and Wyatt are what we later learned would be called incels. They can't get laid. They're socially awkward. Nice kids, just lacking a little confidence. Don't know how to speak to women. I guess that's how a lot of us were. I know I certainly was. But rather than just go out there and start talking to girls and get to know them and, learn them, God forbid, establish an emotional bond with them, They decide, as what happened in the 80s, computers could do any fucking thing. There was a myriad of movies in the 80s in which they were just like a computer made it, or a computer did it, or if you have computer knowledge, then you can start World War III with Russia, or fill a fucking house full of popcorn, or fucking any number of things. And this is the most fucking ludicrous example of it, is Weird Science. They were like, you can use a computer to create a woman. Like, we didn't know, we knew computers were going to be badass. We didn't know at the time that they were going to be just things that you're going to masturbate with, things that you're going to put bunny ears on your head with, and talking a squeaky voice to your, cousin. They didn't know whether we were just going to argue with conspiracy theorists on them. At the time, in the 80s, we were convinced that computers were going to just could make a woman, basically. And a woman that looked like fucking Kelly LeBron. So Gary and Wyatt, the incels, they decide that they're going to, one night, because they can't get laid, that they're going to make a woman. And they use a computer to do it. Now, that fucking shit is ludicrous. And it's way different than any other John Hughes movie out there. So I really wanted to talk about Weird Science first. And maybe I'll talk about 16 Candles and Ferris Bueller's, some other night. But Weird Science is an outlier in the John Hughes movies. It makes no fucking sense. And the whole premise is that a woman was created out of nothing. And her name is Lisa. And she's fucking also omnipotent. She has vast powers. They create her. And the first thing that she does is that she wants to go out and get fucked up. Sounds cool? They go to she materializes some nice clothes for them. That's her first power. Lisa power number one is that she can make people look stylish with the snap of her finger. Blue light. She materializes fake IDs for them, and she materializes for herself a pink, possibly Cadillac, but pink convertible car. So Lisa can materialize things out of fucking nothing. It's what computers can do. They go to a bar, and another problematic thing with John Hughes is he doesn't have a lot of minorities in his movies. It's mostly just suburban white kids. But in this movie, Gary and Wyatt go to the largest concentration of black folks in any John Hughes movie, a bar in, I'm assuming, Chicago, or a downtown area in Illinois, where there's a bunch of black folks. It's kind of a ripoff of a scene from Animal House, but who gives a fuck? They go in there. Also, Lisa is dressed exactly like Miss Elizabeth from the Macho Man Randy Savage's valet from the early 80s, mid 80s, whole 80s really, WWF. She's got the opera gloves on. She's got the dangling earring. She's got the, prom dress looking fucking thing. She looks just like Miss Elizabeth. They go there, Gary and Wyatt. They're very awkward and uncomfortable because they've probably been living in a John Hughes movie their whole lives, so they've never encountered black folks. And so they drink, through their social anxiety. Can't blame them for that. That's what I do. Gary gets fucked up. And then he starts an awkward conversation with these grown-ass men about an 8th grade girl's big titties. Now, this is a generational divide here. Like, you shouldn't really have 8th grade girls, 13 years old is what they said the girl was, grown men talking in a bar about a 8th grade girl's big titties with a 15-year-old boy, because that's how old Gary is. But they do it anyways. You know, this was okay to us back then. I guess my mama wasn't paying attention. You know, she was just like off somewhere, and as long as we had the VCR on and we are watching Weird Science and we were laughing and shit because shit was funny, she didn't give a fuck. But problematic. They leave the bar. Gary is passed out. He's talking. He's culturally appropriating black folks in the way they talk. He's talking jive or whatever. Nobody thought there was anything wrong with that. It was funny to us back then. They come home, and then when they get home, now, if I do any more of these, I'm going to have A Star is Born segment. And when they get home, a star is born because they encounter Bill Paxton as Chet. Now, Chet is Wyatt. It's Wyatt's older brother. Okay. Wyatt's parents are out of town for the weekend, and Wyatt's kind of old enough to watch himself. Wyatt's a fucking latchkey kid too, right? So he encounters Chet when they get home. Chet's supposed to sort of be watching him, and Bill Paxton as Chet is magnificent. He's fucking A Star is Born. Like, I never knew who he was before this movie, and I never forgot him afterwards. God rest his soul. We lost him a few years back, but he put in a hell of a career while he was here, and it kind of started, you know, with this. This is where he got on my radar, and he never left it. Chet is a fucking asshole. A complete fucking bullying dipshit. And Gary and Wyatt get fucking bullied a lot. They get bullied by Ian and Max at school. And then Wyatt gets fucking bullied by his brother when he gets home. And Wyatt kind of gets bullied by Gary a little bit. Gary's a little bit bigger and he's a little bit more aggressive. And Wyatt is, shyer and nicer and sweeter and whatnot. But they encounter Chet, and I watched this with my older brother. And my older brother was a lot like Chet. And when I watched this with him, he recognized Chet in himself, and he fucking loved it. He loved fucking Chet, and idolized Chet, and got a haircut like Chet, and wore wife beaters like Chet. He was all fucking in on Chet. Because, you know, mostly because Bill Paxton did such a fucking badass job at fucking portraying Chet. So cheers to you. You're the Star is Born in this movie. Chet quits fucking with them. He extorts some money out of Wyatt. That's an ongoing theme. Then Gary passes the fuck out, and Wyatt, the sweeter one, has a private moment with Lisa outside. Now, he's probably going to get laid. Loses virginity. She goes on to tell him that. Like, an omnipotent woman, 200 plus, like high 200 IQ, who can materialize things out of everywhere. She tells this 15-year-old incel that she is a slave to him and that he's her master, basically. And whatever he wants to do, she will. I could think of a lot of things to do with Kelly LeBrock, or at least I could have back then, you know. Wyatt wants to watch her exercise, which kind of harkens to an earlier scene in the movie where he was kind of being creepy, watching women work out and stuff. And then he passes the fuck out, and he doesn't get laid. Neither Gary nor Wyatt ever fucks Lisa throughout this entire movie. He wakes up in the morning, he thinks it's all a dream, because another one of Lisa's magical powers is that she can magically just snap her fingers and things get cleaned. Just makes it all fucking happen. Just like that. He encounters Chet a little bit in the morning. He's wearing Lisa's underpants. I don't know how that ended up happening. Chet bullies him a little bit more. And then they hit the mall, which is where fucking shit went down back in the day. That was the social scene, the mall. They're huge fucking dead elephants now. Caverns where old folks go and work out and play backgammon and shit. But back in the day, they were the center for Gen X kids, for Latchkey kids, for our generation, that was the social center of any fucking community or town or neighborhood. And they hit it up here. Gary and Wyatt encounter their bullies, Ian and Max. I don't know if it's Ian and Max, but one of them was Robert Rustler. Good-looking kid, tall, high cheekbones, handsome. And his shorter little comrade, Max or Ian, I don't know which one is which. I think Ian is the shorter one. He's Robert Downey Jr. And he didn't get the Star is Born moment. His star wasn't quite born yet in this movie. But Robert Rustler, his friend, didn't end up doing shit, basically. I mean, he's, maybe some Law and Order episodes. But, Robert Downey Jr., fucking Iron Man, Oscars and shit like that. So he plays a supporting role in this. But it's good to see him. You can tell he's going somewhere. Robert Downey Jr. and this guy, Robert Rustler, Ian and Max, they look fucking fabulous. Moosed up hair and shit. Fucking jackets. Fucking with, pens and enamel pens, 1-inch pens. Everybody looks... This is the most stylish of all the John Hughes movies. Everybody looks fucking... By this time, New Wave has hit. And... everybody's looking good. Some of them other ones, Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller and 16 Candles, the people didn't look all that great. They were wearing those mid-'80s fashions and like pastels and baggy shit and plain shit. But Weird Science, another outlier, people look good. They look stylish, and you could maybe see them, they'd still have a retro look now, but they'd look better. Like, if you watched Molly Ringwald from 16 Candles walk by, you wouldn't think she was retro or anything. You just think she was wearing plain clothes. But these guys all look good. So kudos to them for that. They go to the mall. Ian and Max bully them more by pouring an icy on them. Heads up to ices. They were good shit. They're called daiquiris now, but back in the day they were ices and whatnot. And they get a bunch of, Lisa asks a woman if while she's buying lingerie, if the lingerie would turn on a 15-year-old boy. It's a little creepy. I guess it was played for laughs, but they still a little weird. It's molestation. It's child molestation. Oh, well, who gives a fuck, right? Going through my notes here. Max and Ian bully Gary and Wyatt, and we see a little bit of trouble in Max and Ian's relationship with their girlfriends, Dev and Hilly. They're not down with that. I don't think most women would be. Nobody likes their boyfriends being fucking dickheads and shit. And then they're planting the seeds there for, some schisms ahead. And then Max and Ian encounter Lisa at the mall on the escalator. She's looking smoking hot. And she blows him a little kiss, and they freak out. And they chase after her. And she says that she is going to throw a party at Wyatt's house. Chet's gone hunting. And she decides that she's going to throw a party at him. And that they're invited, and to invite everybody. So Lisa has to go pick up Gary before the party, and you can see that Gary's family is broke. They have a shit fucking house. They live in a basement, Archie Bunker style looking fucking house with all those tones and palettes and shit like that. There's Gary's dad's a plumber, and he doesn't look like he owns the company. You know what I'm saying? He's like a contractor for him or something like that. One of Lisa's superpowers is she goes in there, she fucking disrespects Gary's parents, pulls out a gun, points it at his dad, and kidnaps Gary, basically. I mean, fuck. They get in the car, and Gary's being a little emo. She reveals the gun is a squirt gun. And then she uses another one of her magic powers. and she just makes Gary's parents forget that Gary ever even existed. Just puts amnesia into their fucking heads, and she solves the fucking problem like that. I mean, Lisa's good to fucking have around. And she's an omnipotent being created by a computer. She's useful in many ways. And here in a few minutes, I'm going to get to a Where Are They Now segment, in which we talk about what happened to everybody, the characters, after the movie. So a shit ton of people show up at this party, and this is what I, as a kid, before I started going to parties, assumed all parties were going to be like in high school and for the rest of my life. That's another, like, a power that John Hughes had over us, that he was like, this is how kids party and shit. But you know what? There was never any dancing. I would see parties on TV and shit, and there would be dancing, but parties in Pensacola, Florida, I didn't see any dancing. Whatever the fuck. Anyways, a shit ton of people show up at the party. Gary and Wyatt are still socially awkward, so they hide in the fucking bathroom. They're not ready. Like, the hero's journey of Gary and Wyatt, they're slow to assume the hero's journey. And here it is. It's what they've always wanted. And they even discuss this amongst themselves, is that it's their party and they can't fucking seem to go out and enjoy themselves. Well, Max and Ian's girlfriend, Devin Hilly, they show up at the fucking door. Gary and Wyatt are just petrified and shit, and they won't even fucking open the door for them. And then they do, and they hide. They go further back into the bathroom while Devin Hilly do their hair and makeup and stuff. And then finally they decide, fuck it, we're gonna make a move on these girls, while also hinting that they would like to fuck Lisa as well. And by the time they do it, Deb and Hill are gone. And Lisa is disappointed. So in her omnipotence, she uses another one of her powers. I don't know if it's 4 or 5, but she can conjure mutant bikers at her will. So Road Warrior had come out a couple years before and was a real hit. So you started to see Road Warrior influenced shit in music videos and Road Warrior ripoff movies. And in this case, the mutant bikers from hell that Lisa just conjures out of nowhere are one of them is from the Road Warrior. Vernon Wells, an actor. He was known as Wes in the Road Warrior. He was a nemesis to Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando. Bennett, I believe, was his name in that. And then he was also in this as, mutant biker warlord and shit. She conjures them to come and really put Gary and Wyatt to the test and see if they can fucking pull through. See if they got the metal. And finally they do. And one of the mutant bikers is also Michael Berryman. This guy, he's from The Hills Have Eyes. He was in Cuckoo's Nest too, and Cuckoo's Nest also. And he has no hair, but he also has like no sweat glands, and he has no fingernails. Real creepy looking guy, but exactly who you want to cast as a mutant biker. He's in there too. They show up, Gary and Wyatt fucking... Oh, Vernon Wells was also in this fucked up movie back in the day. Some of y'all might remember it. It was an Australian flick. It was only on HBO, and it was called Fortress, and it had Rachel Ward in it, and there were these like fucking... I don't want to say mutant biker, but rough fucking hillbillies of Australia, whatever they're called, and they like kidnap a whole bus full of kids and shit, and then it gets like fucking crazy violent and shit. I watched that. I'll do an episode. I should do an episode on that, because that movie Fortress back in the day, fucking nuts. Like, I watched it. It was like one of those movies that you like. the more you watch it, the more deep into it you kind of go, and you're like, wow, this movie's way more hardcore than I thought it was going to be. But you're along for the ride. Anyways, head mutant biker who fucks with Gary and Wyatt was in Fortress as well. I want to say something about these mutant bikers' fucking clothes, because it seemed like back in the day, in the 80s, there was like a real fine line between biker gear, like tough guy biker gear, and back room at the fucking leather bar at 3:30 in the morning on a Saturday night gear. Like, you couldn't ever tell if a guy was tough or a fucking, a hard top. It could go either way. There was a certain stage in the 80s where it was like, well, I don't know, he could be a real fucking badass, or he could take it in the ass. You don't know. It was like there were harnesses, and there was like leathers with spikes on it. It was like, to me, that seems like a fucking fetish night at the local gay bar. But back in the 80s, it could also be just like a fucking local biker gang too. You didn't know. Anyways, these biker guys are wearing a lot of that gear. Gary and Wyatt are scared at first, but then they fucking show them down. One of the bikers makes a joke about them masturbating and whatnot, which at the time I understood, and nobody knew anybody masturbated. It was just not talked about. It was like, no, there is no masturbation. No, now everybody knows that everybody does it and shit like that. It's no big deal. But Gary and Wyatt face the demons down, and then they apologize, and then they leave. And now Gary and Wyatt have completed their fucking hero's journey, and they are... Max and Ian got scared and ran off, so Deb and Hill are just there by themselves, and they hit it off, and they zoom out, and they show the house there. And in the 80s, also, they showed a lot of... Anytime there was a field of stars over a scene, they always showed a shooting star. It just always happens. It happened in this one as well. Just a little note on those things. So Deb and Hill crush hard on Gary and Wyatt. They proceed to hook up with them. Some of the girls think that they're moving a little too fast. It's noted that they're moving a little fast, but whatever. I don't know that they have sex because everybody has their clothes on the next day, but they sleep next to each other that night. And then the next morning, everything's good. I skipped over a part where Max and Ian tried to get Gary and Wyatt to make them a girl, and instead they fucked it up and a missile went through the house. It was a pretty fucking crazy party. Gary and Wyatt's grandparents showed up, and Lisa power number 6 or so is that she can make people fucking catatonic and freeze them in place. So she did that to Gary and Wyatt's grandparents when they showed up. But guess who comes back the next day, the next morning? A Star is Born himself, Bill Paxton, and fucking Chet pulls up. He's in a camouflage fucking Bronco. That's the shit now. He's carrying a fucking dead duck and a shotgun, and he sees the condition of the house, and he freaks the fuck out. And he blows the door off to fucking Wyatt's room, goes in there. First he physically assaults Gary's girlfriend, Deb or Hill or whichever one it is. Hits her on the head, like pistol whips her kind of. Fucks her up, goes in there, shoots the doorknob off Wyatt's door, gets them out, beats them up a little bit. They all come down into the kitchen. And in the kitchen, Lisa is there, and they just tell Chet the truth. He's interrogating them and shit. He sees his grandparents. He's a little freaked out by it. Bill Paxton is killing it throughout this whole scene. Chews up every scene he's in. Rest in peace, buddy. And he thinks that they're all just bullshitting it, but I mean, clearly there's a missile in there. He doesn't really have anything to respond to that when Lisa points out, like, hey, there's a missile here. He doesn't know what to fucking say about that. Lisa tells Gary and Wyatt, take your girls home. And while there's a brief car chase, it's the 80s, you gotta have a fucking car chase. Gary has a Ferrari that Lisa has magically made in her omnipotence. And she turns Chet into a huge like pile of shit. And there's some 80s puppetry effects, like Jabba the Hutt style, puppetry. To me, it still looks better than CGI. Anytime you got a real fucking thing there, it looks better than CGI. Like if there was going to be a remake of Weird Science, the Chet fucking turd monster that Lisa makes him into would just be, CGI. But since it's a puppet, it makes it a little cooler. Also, the puppet has Chet's haircut, which is funny. Even in his voice work, because now Paxton's not there, it's the little puppet. Even in his voice work, Paxton fucking kills it and is very fucking funny. But by the time Gary and Wyatt drop their girls off, proclaim their love for the girls to one another, and their story arc is sort of kind of coming to a close. They are now what they wanted to be at the beginning of the movie. Presumably no longer incels. They're going to get laid pretty soon. The way Devin Hill were looking at them and shit. They encounter the piece of shit puppet Chet, and he feels bad for everything he's done. Obviously, he's been smote by Lisa, and he apologizes to Wyatt for being a dick all those years. They go upstairs, and everything, Lisa has waved her magic finger and put everything back the way it was before the party. The missile goes away. Everything runs in reverse. I don't know if Superman's flying backwards around the fucking planet or not, but it's all good. But then Lisa's like, I see that my work here is done. It's as if like she came to them, not that they created her, but that she was sent like in this divine way to go and make them less incels and shit like that. Well, fucking don't make sense. I mean, the whole fucking movie's ludicrous. It's the outlier of the John Hughes movies. Like all the other John Hughes movies could easily fucking happen. This one makes no fucking sense, but computers, that's the way we were taught back in the day. Computers could just fucking make any goddamn thing happen. And then later on, we were just going to watch porn on them and argue with strangers, conspiracy theorists on the internet. So now, we're going to talk about what happened to all these guys. Not the actors, the characters. How would they move on in life? Where would they be now? So Gary and Wyatt, they go on, they've got some technology skills now. They've created a fucking woman, and this is going to be fucking valuable as they move on in their lives. So they start a bio-software business, and it's very successful, obviously. I mean, Lisa's are very valuable. An omnipotent, beautiful woman is going to be worth a lot of money, and they can create these things just with an at-home computer. So they start doing that professionally and making, a lot of Lisas. But Wyatt, being the nicer guy of the two, he kind of sees the ethical issues with it. And he breaks off from the company. He stays with Deb or Hill or whichever one that he ended up with. He stays with her. He raises a family. He invests his money. And Wyatt goes on to, lead a nice life. He's a professional guy, an outstanding member of the of the community. Gary, however, he stays at the company. And what ends up, he becomes one of the richest men in the world, but the company goes public, and then he is ousted by the shareholders of the company when it is revealed that, there are about fucking a Bill Cosby amount of these artificially created women that come out and speak out against Gary and talk about how he has sexually harassed them and done all sorts of things to them. And his reputation is ruined, and he is forced out of the company in disgrace. Chet, he never recovers from being turned into a shit puppet. Wyatt goes on to become, a money maker and a nice guy and a family guy. Well, Chet never fucking leaves the house after this incident. He just, can never speak ill of Wyatt because he's become such a success, but yet resents Wyatt and never does anything of note. He thinks in his head that he wants to, maybe shoot up a mall or something like that, or prevent some sort of mass shooting, but he just never has the balls to actually do it. So sorry about your luck, Chet. Lisa, she gets a job at the phys ed department at the end of the movie, but she's not really challenged by that. So what she then does after that is she sort of just walks the earth and intervening on behalf of people in need and such, like she did with Gary and Wyatt. There's rumors of her, like when she intervenes and materializes thing and helps people, they'll say, like, hey, there was this beautiful woman, and there's like folk tales of her all around the world, but her identity can never really be proven or anything like that. She's just sort of like a superhero who shows up and fixes things and then just vanishes again. That's about it for Weird Science. It's like I said, it's the outlier of the John Hughes movies. It makes no fucking sense. It has no business being a fucking movie. The plot, ludicrous, makes no sense. Heavily reliant on computers, which we thought at the time, latchkey kids thought at the time, we're gonna just could do anything. Start a nuclear war, fill a house full of popcorn, whatever. And the only woman, like at the end of the movie, yeah, Gary and Wyatt kind of figure out like, hey, you have to talk to ladies. You can't just fucking invent one. But Lisa, who is the strongest woman in any John Hughes movies, is basically just a slave to them because they created her. And also, she's a bit of a child molester. But I had it on repeat. I taped it and they played it a lot. And I laughed a lot. But I don't know. Not the best example for kids. I'm going to try and do Ferris Bueller next sometime. Might make a podcast. Fuck, I don't know. YouTube channel. I'm definitely not going to fuck with this live thing if I'm going to do half the fucking thing without sound. Anyways, love you guys. Bye.